Every era has its defining transformation. Ours is the rise of intelligence, where data connects the world and AI reshapes every decision we make. But as machines grow smarter, it's our humanity that must grow stronger, because technology doesn't define progress. Leadership does.
WILDA is the world's premier forum for leadership in AI, bringing together global executives and industry pioneers to shape a fair digital world through collaboration, knowledge exchange, and thought leadership in data, digital, and AI. We believe the future of AI must be guided by empathy, ethics, and inclusion, where every algorithm reflects fairness and every leader drives impact with integrity. From New York to Singapore, from boardrooms to innovation labs, WILDA brings together the world's most forward-thinking leaders to share ideas, challenge boundaries, and turn possibility into progress. We build communities that empower. We create conversations that spark action. We lead with conscience, collaboration, and courage. The future isn't written by algorithms. It is shaped by people who choose to lead differently. People who combine intelligence with compassion, innovation with integrity, and data with purpose. We are the world leaders in data and AI. Together, we are designing a world that is intelligent, inclusive, and deeply human.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. So glad you're here with us live on LinkedIn. Just a great community to come together and really talk about real things. I'm Asha Saxena, founder and CEO of WILDA, World Leaders in Data and AI. I want to start with a number because I think this is the reason why these episodes exist. I would say that this past year, I mean, we all are hearing a lot about the McKinsey report, the MIT report, but I want to mention the MIT Media Lab study. These 300 organizations, and they spoke about the AI deployment. And of course, we hear about this in the conferences all the time, these deployments in real companies, in real budget, not the vendor case studies, but real companies. And the finding is about 95% of the enterprises who have deployed generative AI pilots are producing zero measurable financial return. We've heard about it. We probably talk about it within in our own organization. Think about it. It's not below target. It's zero. And that's against $30 to $40 billion of enterprise investment. It's just not about Gen AI problem. I would say that the Gartner has predicted that more than 4 in 10 agentic AI projects will be canceled outright before the end of the year in 2027, killed by cost overrun and unclear value before they are ever proving themselves or producing any value. And that's a big number if you think about it. So here's the honest question. And I think that's what we're going to be talking about in today's show, is that with that much money and that much energy going in, why can so very few companies are coming out with the value out of the AI systems? We are calling this episode Valuemaxxing with AI. And I'm so glad we have a guest here who spent 3 decades getting paid to answer exactly this question from different vantage points inside the industry. She started at Nielsen in the era where data meant audio meters wired into television sets and paper diaries mailed back by hand. Long before anyone said the word dashboard. From there, she became the chief data analytics officer at Microsoft, then chief data and AI officer at Accenture, and then held same seat at Hub International. 2 years ago, Apple, a company famous for telling almost nobody anything, brought her in to run data and AI. Today, she's the founder and managing partner at Prisma Advisory, where she sits across the table from CEOs, boards, and private equity investment companies who are asking one question. Most AI vendors have never really asked, where is the number that moved and whose name is on it? So who's really responsible for when you're deploying AI projects? So with that, I want to welcome Priya Raman. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Asha. I've been thinking about doing this with you forever, so I'm really, really happy. It's my pleasure to be here.
I'm really excited because here's what I've been thinking about. You've now watched this industry reinvent itself. I would say, 4 or 5 times now? Nielsen mainframe era, Microsoft probably cloud eras, I would say, Accenture enterprise transformation wave, and now Apple and agentic AI. I would say most executives I talk to are convinced that AI moment is unlike anything that came before. I mean, I was having coffee with another industry leader yesterday, and there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of optimism of what AI can do for you, but there's also a lot of stress that's causing a lot of industries, and especially services industries. But when you think about everything you've sat through, what I generally feel that there's something different about this moment. What's the same old execution problem wearing the new name, or is it truly something different?
That's a great question, Asha. What is different is that intelligence is becoming abundant. For the first time in business history, writing, coding, analysis, research, decision support, which were scarce, inaccessible, and expensive, AI is changing that. It is making parts of cognitive work faster, more available at scale. Now, that is why this moment feels better than any of the last wave of automation that we saw. It can change everything around the way we work, on how companies serve customers, develop products, make decisions, and compete. Having said that, the old problems don't automatically disappear. Strategy still matters. Data, which is the foundation of all of this intelligence, still matters. Trust still matters. And organizations still have to get all of this work done, right? So my simplest view is that this is an era where AI is making intelligence abundant. It does not make execution automatic. And the winners are going to be companies that are not the ones that talk the most about AI, but they are going to be the companies that use AI to redesign on how they create value.
I love that, because I think what you spoke about, it doesn't make execution automatic. I mean, I think there is really power behind it, because yes, AI is a tool which can be your superpower. You said AI, the intelligence is abundance, and that is true. And everybody has that. What's your own IP? I was talking to another startup, and they were talking about, we are fintech, but everybody has the AI now. So even though we are adding AI into our fintech, what is our IP? And I think you need to think about, as a business owner, or a business, or a stakeholder in a business unit, is that how am I using this technology? And is it truly a tool, or is it creating a value or creating IP for me? And I've been in rooms with publicly traded company C-suite leaders, where the committee would say, oh, it's just another tool, another implementation. And then the question comes, what's the value? What is this value this tool is creating? And so I think there's a tension that I want to really talk about. And I think that rightfully so, we've named our episode Value Maximizing, or with AI instead of tool maxing. And I think that too, the value and tool fight, or that goes on. And when you think about it, it's more co-pilots, more POCs, more stalling pilots. When you talk about value maxing, what do you actually mean by it, and how is it different from a company simply adopting another AI tool? Because there is a confusion, and a lot of companies are really thinking about that.
Yeah, and I just want to build on what you said earlier. So most companies are tool maxing. So when you look at how companies are treating AI, they're treating it like a software rollout. So give people co-pilots, launch chatbots, run pilots, measure token usage. So these companies are celebrating how much AI a company is consuming rather than what the business is actually producing. Now, if you
Yeah,
take a step back, this is why I like working with the CEO and boards. CEOs are not paid to maximize tools or tokens. They are paid to grow revenue, expand margin, retain customers, make customers happy, delight them, reduce risk, and build a moat around their business that the competitors cannot copy. So the conversation has to move from AI consumption, which I feel some of the companies are getting obsessed with, saying that, oh, we need AI tools and how much tokens are you consuming? It's just crazy. When people talk about token maxing, it drives me nuts. We have to move away from that AI consumption to business outcomes.
yeah,
And what I mean by that is that, this is the reason when I took a step back, when the whole world was talking about token maxing, token maxing, token maxing. And I said, okay, I got to take a step back and I need to have my own term here called value maxing. And value maxing shifts the conversation from AI consumption to AI driving business outcomes.
right.
It is about intentionally redesigning the workflows, the designs, the business models where AI can create disproportionate value. So when we all take a step back, and really look at it, token maxing measures consumption, value maxing measures outcomes.
Yeah,
And this is an important shift. And the way I look at businesses is I ask them, I'm looking at them when they're asking these questions. If they're asking the question, where can we use AI? That's a wrong question to start with.
yeah,
That question has to move to, what could this business do differently if intelligence became cheaper, faster, and more scalable? That's the right question to ask. And using AI, and I'll give you some examples. Using AI to help salesperson write a better email is adoption. Great. They're using the tool to reach an end of writing a better email. However, when I talk about value maxing, it's about redesigning the commercial engine. So every seller has research, account intelligence, proposals, coaching, next best actions, and then that starts to show in how win rates are improving without increasing the sales cost. That's what is value creation. So the line to remember is AI adoption puts a tool into a workflow. AI value creation redesigns the workflow around the new cost of intelligence. And that's what is really important. So that's where I'm starting to talk about value maxing and how companies should be focused around that versus tools, tokens, and technology.
I think there's a great point here, because companies who are using AI as a tool, as a cost center, are only going to get the benefit so much. But if you really start thinking about AI as a value add, then now you're looking at truly as investing in AI, which is giving you value, which is a lot bigger than what a tool can give you. You and I can talk about that, but the truth is the gap still exists. If you think about it, I sit on boards and I hear the board members talking about in the room that, yeah, there are 5 pilots running somewhere in the org, but nobody can really point out the line item where those pilots are actually moving the needle. And right now, there's more AI activity, in a lot of organizations than ever before. Pilots are everywhere. Energy, I would say the energy in every meeting and every room, the discussion is about the ROI. They want to see the value, but it's not showing it on the income statement. Why is that gap so persistent?
That's an amazing question, and it's been true with every time a new technology has come into play. Uh, and if you really take a step back, most companies are still focused on AI activity agenda, not the AI value agenda. They count pilots, licenses, how many people are using these licenses, how many models are getting deployed, how many training sessions that we have around AI. I'm not saying that that's not important, but you need to look at more useful indicators, and to understand how a company is performing based on this new investment. So our ROI tends to, in my view, ROI tends to disappear in four places. The first is when teams start with technology instead of a material business problem. So material business problem classified as increasing revenue, decreasing cost, expanding margins, improving customer satisfaction, decreasing risk. If the team is starting with technology instead of a material business problem, it's breaking down. The second is they automate a task but do not redesign the end-to-end workflow around it. So a lot of pilots, you see, oh wow, this pilot is great. It can bring down the entire workflow time from 7 hours to 2 hours. But the reality is that you've not redesigned that workflow to realize the benefit out of it, and also getting to that work getting that solution from a pilot to a production stage. There are several issues that it opens up. The foundations are weak. There's fragmented data, there's unclear ownership, there is missing permissions from a legal perspective of whether can you really put this into a production. There is poor integration, there is insufficient trust and adoption. So you've not reimagined the new workflow with all of these other things perfectly working and being in place to go there. And then last but not the least, I would say that there is no single person who is looking at this end to end to capture that benefit, because it touches many different owners, touches many different areas. You don't have a single person who's looking at this end to end to capture that benefit.
Right.
So AI may save time, improve decisions, increase capacity, but unless a business leader changes the way things work without AI and with AI being implemented in the process, with staffing changes, with the process changes, pricing changes, what service levels should you expect now? What are the incentives for adoption? The value will stay very theoretical, and it will not appear on that P&L statement that you're looking at. So the model is rarely the bottleneck, because you can do it in a pilot, you can prove it out. The operating model of how all of this comes together and actually benefits the organization, that's where the biggest gap is.
That's why I say that it's not a technology project anymore. It has to be a business project, because if business doesn't get involved and really think about their workflows, as you spoke about. And I was talking to another company, they were talking about that having actually somebody who owns the workflows, having actually a title who's a workflow officer who actually looks at the workflow. I think that is such an important piece, because if you sit in silos and just, as you said earlier, give the licenses for Copilot to your entire team and just say, write a better email, now you're not really getting true value. It's really thinking about your workflows to understand, are these workflows the right workflows that we are actually trying to figure out how to automate or use AI for? Uh, I know you work with a lot of organizations really thinking about their AI roadmap, the right roadmap. And you mentioned earlier, before this session, is that there are three questions you ask. So can you talk to me about the three questions you ask before you even evaluate? Because I think most executives never have been, thinking about the question. They go straight to the roadmap because they are now in rush. Everybody's saying they have this fear of missing out, and they want to jump right into AI and start seeing the value, but are they really thinking about the right things?
Yeah, absolutely. The FOMO is real. And that's why it's very good to take that step back. And I use very simple questions. The first is, what is the price? What business outcome is valuable enough to matter? More revenue, better retention, lower cost to serve, faster product development, lower risk. Name and name that metric, quantify that opportunity. What is the business, what outcome is valuable enough to matter, and how do I measure the before and after? Right? That's the first question. The second is, what has to be true? So what must be in place to work? So these blockers, these enablers can be blockers, and how do you kind of convert them into enablers? It could be the data foundation itself, or the data that you need is not fit for purpose. It's the workflow access, understanding the process, the real workflow, not the one that is on paper, but the real workflow where the exceptions happen and some human has found a way around it. Do you have access to understanding that workflow? The governance around the data, the workflow, skills, economics, permissions, what needs to be true for all of these things to come to life? Customer trust, leadership alignment, the legality of it all. So you have to list all of those down and say, for this prize, for us to win this prize, all of this has to be in the right place. And it need not be 100% before you move ahead, but it has to be fit for use before you move ahead. But understanding that these are blockers, and I can go with what I have today, or I may need to invest more before I go today. Having that clear understanding is very important. And then the third question is, how does the value reach P&L? So because you saved 1 hour somewhere else, how do you redeploy that 1 hour to actually create, oh yes, we actually created more value. So let me elaborate that a little bit. This is the question that most companies are skipping today in terms of who is changing what capacity gets redeployed, what process disappears because I've put this new workflow in place, what decisions are improving, who owns the results, and how will finance verify it so you know that you're taking that money to the bank at the end of the day. So the the real thing is over here is that do not ask whether AI can do something, ask whether business can capture the benefit once it does. So if you are creating productivity or efficiency, can that efficiency, whatever time you've saved, can that be redeployed to reduce less people? Or can that be redeployed to do something better that improves customer experience? Only then you start to see things impacting the P&L.
I agree with you. And I think when you talk about outcome, to me, I think the biggest thing is thinking about like how the old way of thinking about a human task was give job description, role, responsibility. And now you have somebody, an employee in your company who's actually task focused. So our organization was very task focused. And now we are moving to this digital humans or the agents, the world of agent, where we are going to have somebody who's a human and somebody who's a digital human working in a team. Instead of task focused, they're going to be outcome focused, capacity focused. So the whole organization is going to have this shift of it's not about how much are you doing alone, but how much your team that includes the agents, what is the output, what is the outcome, what is the capacity this team is producing becomes more important. But as we talk about agent, something I read on Gartner, which made me really think about the term they've coined, Gartner coined, is called agent washing. Vendors who are taking an old chatbot or basic automation script and just slapping the word on it, agentic on it, and selling it as the future. And Gartner now owns, estimates around thousands of vendors claiming agentic capability, and maybe only hundreds are the real thing. So really a big gap in that. So companies are buying the label and getting the same tool they had 2 years ago, which brings me to two things. People constantly blurring together because I hear CEOs use use this term interchangeably, and they're not the same thing. An employee using a tool to draft email, as you said, is not the same as the enterprise creating a new value. So, what's the actual difference between employees getting more productivity, which I don't think is a bad thing, and the enterprise creating new value? And why does that distinction matter so much?
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about agent washing. And when I speak to CEOs of companies today, they are overwhelmed because you have every other vendor coming to them and saying, oh, they have an agent for this and they have an agent for that. And they are in a situation where they feel fire hosed with all of these options. That's a different topic for another day. But let's go back to your core question of what is the difference between the employee productivity and the value that the enterprises are getting. So, employee productivity creates potential. Like, you're saving that 1 hour because the because the because AI wrote that email for you. It's creating a potential. It's creating that, okay, now what do I do with that 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours that it frees me up, and well, how can I use that in a different way? So enterprise value comes from capturing that potential. What can we do as people are spending lesser time or should be spending lesser time on, say, writing a mail or creating a document, or reviewing a legal document, or any of those. What the enterprise value will come from how that potential is captured. So AI may give thousands of people extra hour a day. That sounds impressive. But if the organization does not redesign the work, reallocate that capacity, improve service, reduce the cost, the P&L may not move at all. So that is the distinction. So saving time is not the same as creating value. I've seen so many of these pilots which says, oh, it saves so much of time. And my question is, so what? You know,
Yeah.
and so for, and that is where it's really, really important. And I saw a real life example where we were reducing customer service handling time, and everyone was celebrating it. It went to a town hall, everyone clapped hands and said, that's awesome. We'll be saving so much time. And I said, okay, so what? So what are we going to do with all that time saved? So the outcome is serving more customers with this human machine. Now that the human machines are working together, is serving more customers without adding additional headcount, improving the resolution quality, which I would say will delight customers.
Yeah.
How many times are you happy with the customer service, right? I'm not. I mean, maybe call me cynical or what. Whenever I go interacting with any customer service in any industry, I have more complaints than I have good words to say, right? So it's about how is that helping in improving the resolution quality, reducing churn in people who have the knowledge, and how do you move people to a higher value customer work where the customer feels finally someone cares about me, right? So it
Yeah.
is, and I've seen these examples, and I feel like uh, the same applies to any other area: coding, sales, finance, HR, operations. So, time saved is a standard asset
Yeah.
until leaders decide where it goes. So, that's what I would say.
It's repurposing also your time. I did a workshop with some of the senior leaders of a large organization, and one of the exercises which we did for them was rethink your job if AI is going to do 40% of your job. So what would you do with that 40%? How would your job change? And I think the advantage of that is to have leaders really jump in and recreate what would it look like in 2, 3 years when AI is going to truly help them. And I think it has to be, and the adoption and the fear has to evaporate for them to really jump right in and see that not as a threat, but as a added value to their job. But when we think about enterprises, what do you think the leaders how should leaders decide which AI bets deserve real capital? Because they're with the pilots going on, uh, they could also decide which ones or which pilots should stay small as experiment and which should just get killed. How
Yeah,
do you decide that?
that's a great question. And I'm happy that a lot of these CEOs that I have been talking to recently are starting to treat it like a capital allocation and less thinking of it like an innovation theater. And I use a simple portfolio approach when I'm talking to CEOs about it. First, are the scale now bets, right? Understand which are the high value, high feasibility areas. What I mean by that is high value, which is going to have an impact on all the outcome areas that we talked about. And high feasibility is where your data, permissioning, all of the other things that you need to consider, which are enablers but could be blockers currently that you need to work on. So if there is a high value, high feasibility bet with a named business owner, like it could be a workflow leader, or reimagine that, but with a named business owner who carries that cross,
Yeah,
a measurable business outcome and a credible path to deployment, go invest on those. If you don't have, if you don't know whether it's a high value, high feasibility, you don't have someone named around it, etc., don't, take a step back, think about it. Let's then decide whether to invest in that or not. The second, I would say the second is that there could be areas that are very high value, but there could be issues with data, workflow, permissioning. Some of those could not be ready. But because they're high value and you do see a large potential and you need to unblock some of those other things that I talked about, I would say that those are invest areas of saying that, okay, we can't realize it in the short term, but let's invest in it because we know that in the long term they will lead to significant change. And then once it gets ready for that, again, ensure that you have a named business owner, a measurable outcome, a credible path to deployment to
yeah,
ensure that that's done. And then last are learning bets. I'm not saying that, hey, you should stop all innovation or experimentation. So ensure that you have a sandbox around these areas which are learning bets that are small, fast, tightly bounded experiments where the objective is to prove or disprove, have a specific hypothesis, have a gate to
yeah,
say, this is what will qualify it as go, no go. And once you've decided it's go, no go, it either sits in scale now bets, which is
yeah.
go now, or it is invest. We know that it can be done. It's very exciting. It can give you that results, but let's ensure that we are building the right foundations in place to make it happen.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. But I want to talk a little bit about value blockers. You talk about the value blockers could be data readiness, unclear ownership. You spoke about the ownership, governance that was never designed for AI speed decisions, or even infrastructure choices as basic as compute sizing. That could be a value blocker. And the stakes of getting governance wrong, that could be a big challenge. Again, one of the reports Gartner projected, I think in 2026 alone, roughly third of companies will actively damage their own customer relationship by deploying AI before it's ready. So think about it, like misread personalized engine here or compliance blind agents there.
Mhm.
Of all the blockers you see repeatedly, which one trips up the most companies?
I'm going to say something controversial over here, but okay, I'm just going to say it, right? So the biggest hidden blocker is the gap between the model and the manager.
Yeah,
And companies often say that the problem is, oh, the data is bad. The data bashing, you've been in this world, and I've been, the amount of data bashing that happens is, oh my God, the data is so bad, we can't do anything, right? And that's how a lot of things start. There is then, oh, the governance is not in the data governance, or the governance of overall way of thinking is not there. So talent is often seen as a problem area. Technology is seen as an area. I'm not saying that these don't matter, but these do matter. But the deeper
yeah,
problem is that when many companies do not yet have an operating system for AI. And what I mean by that is being very clear about your priorities for the business, having clear ownership, decision rights, governance, workflow redesign, understanding, okay, if I tinker this small part of supply chain process, how is it gonna unravel across? And how does, now I understand part of it will be done by human, part of it will be done by machines. How do I orchestrate that in a way where no one is getting worried, oh my God, what's happening, right? And
Yeah.
the cost discipline is very critical. I'm increasingly getting uh, calls and having discussions on, oh my God, we actually realized that this consumes a lot more tokens than what we had earlier planned for. It was funny, I just saw an article where Ford let go of their people and then brought some of those engineering talent back because AI was consuming a lot of tokens and also not doing the job the right way, right? So having the discipline to understand what is the cost, what that workflow redesign look like, and what is a repeatable way to scale. These are all critical considerations that I feel like the manager, the leader has to take a step back and put in place before thinking about, or as they think about, okay, how is this solution going to scale with AI? That is why you see organizations sometimes with very sophisticated models. I have seen organizations which have, MIT PhDs running amazing sophisticated models, but have not realized any value.
Right.
So all of these things, data readiness is essential, governance is essential, the economics of infrastructure matters too. And a company should should also be careful about saying, okay, do I need a bazooka to kill a mosquito? Like, you also take a step back and say that do you need, and a very common example in my company, one of the companies I work with, was that you could have used CPUs, but you use GPUs to solve that problem. Why? Not needed, right? So it is the last mile, and I would say that the last mile of AI is not technical. It is managerial. It is about the leadership decision of being able to look at how the full picture of how this is going to impact the end to end, and how do you remove the blockers at that end to end level.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think technology is not a bottleneck. People are, and sometimes, I love that you actually said it out loud that it's the gap between the teams, the people, the business technology managers, teams. People are the one who really own it for execution, for adoption, for strategy, design. And so if you don't invest in the people, it becomes challenging. So how do you bring people along when the technology is moving so fast? And they're moving faster than they can imagine or be ready to change. So it's not just the gap between managers and leaders. Yesterday, I was talking to actually a CHRO who was technically so savvy, and he was talking about 20% of the company is hyper focused on using AI agents, and they are active users. And he said 80% of the companies they can't move. So how do you really think about bringing people along when the technology is moving faster than they are? And the gap between the people who are adopting and who are not is just getting wider.
No, absolutely. That's a very relevant question. I've had so many different things around it, but in my actual experience, when I'm working with people, people do not resist AI itself. They resist a future that feels opaque,
Yeah.
that's imposed on them, that's potentially threatening to their role, their status, judgment, and their livelihood. At the end of the day, we're dealing with human beings. So the thing is that what I would say is that the leaders, this is where, what I answered before, the leaders have to make the future concrete.
Yeah.
Tell people what will change. Tell them what will remain human. Be clear where the accountability stays. Explain how success will be measured. Give them skills, time, and support to adapt. So involve the frontline people in designing the new workflow, because it does need a redesign if you are going to bring in AI. They understand how where the work really breaks down, where the customers get frustrated, where AI can be a tool to help with that friction, right? So do not sell people AI as a technology program. Help them design a better day at work, less repetitive work, better judgment, more customer time, and more meaningful contribution. At the end of the day, it all boils down to what's in it for me. Don't ask people to adopt AI. Ask them, tell them, explain to them how this is going to improve their lives and how they can help in redesigning that work.
I love that. As we come to the end of the episode, I love closing the episode with, I love that AI evolves with every line of code and people evolve with the meaning. And how do you bring your people along with talking about what's in it for them? How can they really improve and how their life can really improve, and what's the meaning behind using AI to become more productive, add more value. And I think that's what is all about leadership. AI is not a technology initiative, it is a leadership initiative. And we've heard that before. And I think it truly is in every sense. And that's why I think the LinkedIn leadership community, it is onto you. And I truly believe that AI has brought humans onto a next level. We all have been upgraded as managers, as leaders, because we will be leading the AI, agentic AI era, where we will be working in the workplace, our enterprises, our organizations, where we are not just working with people, we are working with digital agents. And I think it's time that we all invest in learning, growing, evolving as leaders, and understand how this technology works and use it in everything and anything you work with. Build your own agents and work with your own agents on helping you improve and figure out how to be more productive and where do you want to spend your time in. It's all about your choices and where do you want to invest that time that you save to be more productive and add value. Continue being a value add to wherever you are. I always say the world leaders in data and AI organization, which brings together the senior leaders, we learn in the peer-to-peer community. Find your peer-to-peer community, because communities are going to become a lot more important as we are living in the world of AI. And it's important that we share, pass along our knowledge. And that's what Priya, you did today, is really paid forward to the community of LinkedIn, and really share true examples that people can actually listen, jump right in, and evolve. So thank you so much for being here. Really
It is my
appreciate it.
pleasure.
And thank you everyone for listening. We'll see you next time with the AI Talk Show. I'm Asha Saxena. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.